So in this segment, we're going to be giving a bit of an update to the sort of trade spat that's gone on with Liz Truss and Australia. So just a quick update. So the deal between the UK and Australia, apparently we've agreed the vast majority of the trade deal. After talks on Friday in London, the two said they aim to seal a deal by the end of June or by June. Is estimated the deal could add £500 million to the UK's GDP over the long term, which is not a lot, to be honest, especially since I think the trade with Australia, between Australia and the UK, is about 18 billion. So you're really not adding a lot. This is more optics than anything. But we go to the article. Britain's High Commissioner in Australia has been forced into national TV down under to try and smooth over a row a row over a bizarre comment about a possible trade deal, which have been branded sledging in Canberra, which I don't know how to pronounce actually. So, for anyone who doesn't know, this is over Liz Truss saying that she would the minister in charge of trade for Australia on an uncomfortable chair, and he would have to deal with her for 9 hours, which does sound like a nightmare. The embarrassing development was privately described by one Australian government minister as minister of being counterproductive to international trade. Secretary Liz Truss's hopes of striking a deal to partially make up for the UK's loss of opportunities due to Brexit. That is a phenomenal way to frame it. Also, the fact that Australia are in talks to do a trade deal with the EU as well. So we'll see how different that deal is between the two groups. So between the Australia UK deal and the Australia EU deal. Anonymous sources in Ms Truss's department were reported to have said she was planning to throw down the gauntlet over the glacially slow progress made in negotiations when she speaks to Australian counterpart Dan Teheran in face-to-face talks in London. So, this stuff's already happened. This was the comment. She plans to sit him in the Locarno room in the Foreign Office in an uncomfortable chair, so he has to deal with her directly for 9 hours. Yes, it is a nightmare. No wonder progress happened. Or I suppose they were... we don't know how well they were doing under the Dan Teheran's predecessor. So it could have been the fact that, they got most of it agreed, but this guy was like, oh, I need to check on a few things to make sure everything's cool. And then she's like, oh, you're being a bit slow. That could have happened. The source reportedly described Mr. Teheran as inexperienced despite the fact that he's been doing since 1998. So, the argument that this guy's a bit slow is ridiculous. Australia's ABC News said the comments were greeted with a mixture of disbelief and laughter. The inexperienced jibe was regarded as more peculiar, as before entering Parliament, Mr. Tehan worked from 1995 at the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and later as a senior advisor to the Trade Minister. So I wonder what Liz Truss has been doing in that time, because I don't think it was anything to do with trade. So he's been the Minister of Trade, Tourism and Investment since December. Mr. Tehan's office refused to comment. The broadcaster quoted one of the ministers as saying that the comments appeared to reflect the UK's desperation to rush through a deal. And even the Aussies can see it, and that tells you everything. The Aussies know we're desperate for a deal, and that means they know they can get concessions out of us. So maybe that's why trade negotiations had stalled, because this guy Dan Tehan, given his experience, was like, we can get something here. We can get something, and evidently he might have done. A bit of sledging. It's not a very good tactic, though. He added. I would actually think it's more likely to be counterproductive. No doubt they try and blame it on the media. I mean, to be fair, they haven't really blamed anyone. UK High Commissioner Vicky Treadle tried to damp down the row, telling Australian TV viewers that Mr. Tehan would receive a warm welcome and not be made uncomfortable during his talks. I mean, he's dealing with Liz Truss, so that's already uncomfortable. Like, don't make me play the video again, guys. Don't make me do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to see it again. I know the venue that is being used, and certainly the chairs in the room in question are very comfortable. I mean, this is embarrassing to have to say on Australian TV. But, what if Liz Truss got a specialist chair that was very uncomfortable? Maybe that was her tactic, to got rid of all the comfortable chairs and put in one comfy one and one non-comfy one for Mr. Tehan. This is a trade negotiation, so there will be tactics on both sides. But this is not how you conclude trade negotiations between two sovereign powers. This is stupid. She goes on to say, but what we both want, and the political ambition between Britain and Australia is is there to get a gold standard deal. I mean, we're not going to get. How do you define what a gold standard deal is, considering it's only going to add 500 million to our GDP over the long term, which isn't a lot for given how strong Britain's economy is. In the long term as well, that could be 10 years. So, how do you define a gold standard deal? It says Australia is also engaged in trade talks with the EU, which ministers had previously indicated take priority over negotiations with Britain. How dare they? How dare Australia give priority to the EU? Shocking behaviour. I thought you Aussies were nice people, huh? You can deal with alligators, but clearly Britain's too big for you guys, huh? So yeah, Australia is engaged in trade talks with the EU, which ministers have previously indicated take priority over negotiations with Britain, as the European market represents a much larger export opportunity. I mean, it does, but, we're Britain, man. Enough said. ABC quoted an unnamed Australian minister as saying that London appeared to be trying to shift the blame on lack of progress to us, which they did do. They did blame Mr. Tehan for the lack of progress, so he is correct, or this person is correct in their statement. The UK still hasn't landed a new deal post-Brexit, just continuity deals. I would say the UK-Japan deal is slightly different, but that is more of a continuity deal, but it's more in favour of Japan. Also, I don't think the Canada deal's fully finished yet, a UK-Canada deal, so that's interesting. This minister goes on to say, the UK still hasn't landed a new deal post-Brexit, just continuity deals, said the minister, referring to deals that have been rolled over from the UK's time in the EU. Negotiations with the US and New Zealand continue to be unresolved too, not just us. So the UK is struggling to strike up new deals with other countries. And other countries know that we're desperate, and that's why they can get concessions out of us. They can do this. It's not hard for them, because in reality, they're the ones. The UK are the ones who benefit more from doing trade deals with these countries, because we need the optics. It's not about economics here. We're talking 500 million over the long term. It's nothing for this country's GDP. What we are trying to win is the battle of optics, and these countries know this. They're not idiots. They're not idiots. They've got proper sharks in their trade negotiation teams. They know what the UK is desperate, and they're going to exploit that. Liz Truss said, I am looking forward to giving Ms. Tehan a warm welcome. We want a gold standard deal, blah, blah, blah. A deal with strengthened ties with one of our closest friends, well, not geographically, and a fellow pro-trade democracy, and help pave the way for the UK CPTPP. And so if we actually look at, some of the specifics of the trade deal, so we've got this tweet here from Liz Gerald, which says that the Express is loving the idea of bringing us cheaper wine, but we don't actually import that much wine from Australia. So, most of it comes from Europe. Obviously, that number's going to go down once we start doing import checks. Well, potentially could go down, depends on how rich the people are buying it. But, how valuable the deal is going to be, 18.8 billion, that's the UK's total trade with Australia. We're going to add about 500 million onto that potentially over the long term. We spent more on test and trace than we did with trade with Australia, so not great. And then we go on to David Henning, who says, fact, a wine drinker could save £100 for a year from an Australia trade deal if they drank 3 bottles of wine per day. And I would argue that if you drank 3 bottles of wine a day, you would not live to see out that year. So this deal isn't that great in the first place. It's going to add a bit of money on in terms of the country's GDP over the long term. It's more for optics, but what you can see is, other countries know we're desperate. Other countries know we're desperate for trade deals, and they will exploit that. I would not be surprised to see if this trade deal was more in favour of Australia than it was for the UK, despite the fact that the UK has a bigger economy than Australia. It wouldn't surprise me one bit, but shouts out the Aussies. If they get a good deal out of us, then so be it, because we've put ourselves in a weakened position. We did this, and I can't wait to see what the differences are between the deal the EU get with Australia and the one the UK will get from Australia. But anyways, I know this video is slightly slow, but I'm just getting through a backlog of stories. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.